Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Tim. This is New Craft Workshop, and you have found episode 3 already of our intermediate woodworking series. If this is your first time here, welcome in, but like seriously, where you been? We have a really good time here on our channel with the beginners and intermediate series. So if this is your first time here, go ahead and click that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, and join us every single week as we post a ton of new content. So this particular series, the way we do it is a little different than our beginners series. We do a rebuild of one of our beginners projects, but we do it on an intermediate level. We're going to make that particular project that we give you a very basic concept on the beginners series. We're going to dress it up, and we're going to use a whole lot more of the tools in our shop to get that thing accomplished. On the beginners, we might use butt joints and nothing but the miter saw. Here we're going to use dados and rabbets and miters, and we're going to use the table saw and the planer. We're going to use it all on this particular series. So part 2 of this little episode that we do here is tools, tips, and techniques. Today we are talking about blades for your shop between your miter saw and your table saw. Which blade is going to be right for which application? And finally, section 3 is our original build. Today we're making a really cool wine rack. Even though I am building this for my particular place in our home, this thing is scalable. This is going to hold 4 wine glasses and 4 bottles. That's what's going to work for us where I'm going to hang this. Make it 6 wide, 7 wide, 8 wide, whatever you want to do. Don't make it 7. Don't make an odd number. That's such a weird number. But I guess, hey, the same people that said our toilet paper holder in the beginners series that the toilet paper should go backwards, y'all are probably the same ones that are going to put an odd number of wine glasses and bottles on this shelf. So
That's weird.
just saying. But hey, love you all. Appreciate all the support you've given us already. Enough talk. Let's get right after section 1. Right after build number 1. So in a previous beginners episode, we did some outdoor wall sconces that we put a candle up on. We made them out of cedar pickets. They were very basic and they were outdoor, cheap looking. I'm not going to lie, but they were basic. They were designed to go out on the patio. So today what we're going to do is we're going to make that set of really nice wall sconces that you just saw. We are going to be using 4/4 walnut for this. These are going in our home, and I'm going to try to make these as nice as possible, but this is also going to be a fairly quick build because the second build we're doing today is going to take a little bit of time, so I'm trying to do a really quick one today, but these are going to be really nice. So if you have a lumber yard in your area, I highly suggest going and browsing an actual lumber yard and getting away from the big box store. I know I do use a lot of big box lumber here. That's because a lot of these projects I'm doing them on the fly. I'm not sure how they're going to turn out. And once I make something from cheaper lumber, if I like it, I'll build it like we're doing today from some walnut. So first thing we're going to need is our cut list. Now, this is going to be quick and easy. We are going to need 2 pieces of 6-inch wide walnut. These are cut to 14 inches long each. And then we're going to need 2 pieces. These are cut to 4 3/8 of an inch each. Now, we are going to put this together basically like this, but we are going to definitely dress this up. So let's get to our tool list. Now, to cut everything to length, of course, we're going to need our miter saw to get everything cut to length, which I just said, but anyway, you're going to need your miter saw. Then we are going to need the table saw. Whenever you buy material from the lumber yard, I never buy S4S, which is surfaced on all 4 sides, which means they finish all 4 sides for you. I'm not paying for that. I've got 2 rough edges here that I am going to clean up at my table saw. The less material that the lumberyard cleans up for you, the cheaper your material is going to be. And I will tell you right now, you can get some really nice material at the lumberyard for the price you're going to pay for finished pine that we all know bends, warps, cracks, bows, everything in the world that could be wrong with it is going to be wrong with it when you get it home. So back to our tool list. Sorry, I got sidetracked. We're going to need our table saw, and then we are going to need our dado set for our table saw. Now, if you don't have a dado set, you can creep up on this. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to cut a groove for this stock to go into. We want this recessed a little bit. We're going to glue this in place, and that's how this is going together. If you don't have a dado set, you can use your saw blade. You're just going to have to creep across your measurements. It's just going to take you a couple more passes. It's really not that big of a deal. It's just going to take you a little bit longer to get that dado cut into your back piece. You're also going to need your router or router table in our case. And other than that, we're just going to need some glue and some clamps. And that's it. So let's get to building. All right, I'm going to take these things outside, put a couple coats of clear matte finish on this. I don't spray anything in my shop, and you shouldn't either, unless it's very, very well ventilated. So anyway, that's all that's left. Look, man, these things are freaking nice. Hopefully it shows up on camera how nice these actually turned out. Like anything made out of walnut looks great. But yeah, this is a rebuild of our beginners series sconces that we made. Beginner series sconces, yeah, that we made. I think that was one of the very first projects we ever did, but this is a whole lot nicer. This is going to get finished and put up in our hallway or dining room. I'm not sure where my wife is going to put these yet, but yeah, that's it for build number one. Let's get on
tools, tips, techniques. Today's topic: saw blades.
All right, guys, today we're going to talk about saw blades, circular saw blades to be exact. Circular blades we're going to use in our handheld circular saw. We're going to use those with our miter saw. We're going to use them with our table saw. Now, the options, brands, styles, etc. are endless. There is a massive selection of blades out there, but we're going to talk mainly about three types of blades that we use commonly in our shop, and you probably do in yours as well. We have ripping blades, crosscut blades, and combination blades. Now, the main difference between these three types of blades are going to be the amount of teeth on each of these. Ripping blades are designed to cut down the length of your material. We're primarily going to use ripping on our table saw, but you can rip down your material with things like a track saw or a guide like this from Craig, or you can just simply put a straight edge and run your circular saw down that as well. Ripping blades are going to give you a more aggressive cut. They've got large straight teeth, and it's going to allow them to pull that dust out of the way and give you a faster cut. But in combination with that faster cut, a ripping blade is not going to give you a fine finish. So moving over to a combination blade. Now, this is going to be great for ripping and cross cutting. It's going to have a little bit more teeth. It's going to give you a finer finish than a ripping blade, but it is going to have some larger grooves cut out, usually between 5 and 6 teeth. They're going to have a tooth missing. That's going to allow it to pull some of that material out a little quicker when you're ripping. But because of the increased amount of teeth on these blades, it's going to give you a finer finish when you are doing your cross cuts. All right, and finally, let's talk about cross cut blades. Now, you are going to see some cross cuts on a job site, especially when it comes to framing. You're going to use more of an aggressive blade on a construction site. But here in our workshop, crosscut blade I have on my miter saw is 80 tooth. That is going to give me a really fine finish and eliminate a lot of that splintering and fraying on the end when you cut through your material on the cross. Now, another thing that is going to assist you in a clean cut is a slower cut. The faster you cut material, the rougher your backside, blowout side, whatever you want to call it on the bottom is going to be. So just take your time, go through your material a little bit slower. That's also going to help clean up your cut. So hopefully that explains a little bit of the difference between a ripping, a crosscut, and a combination blade. And if you have any questions at all, anytime we do this tools, tips, and techniques section, please comment down below, ask your question, and I'll do my absolute best to give you an answer. If I can't find it myself, I'll Google one for you. So that's it. Let's get on to build number 3, guys. All right, section 3, new build, wine rack. It's going to be cool. So as always, we are going to start with our cut list. Now, I'm going to do this a little bit different today. I usually give you a very precise cut list. I'm going to give you 2 cut lists today because I am using 1x6 poplar. I had a 10-foot piece here in the shop, and this is what we're going to use. Couple reasons. One, poplar stains a whole lot better than pine, and we do want to stain this. We want it to look nice and kind of match what's going on in the area where this is getting hung. So first cut list I'm going to give you is all of the lengths. Once we get over to the table saw, I will pop up a second cut list, and that will show you all of the lengths plus what we've cut them down to our final width. So first thing you're going to need is 2 pieces at 7 inches long. And yeah, I have a little cheat sheet here on the back of an envelope. So we need 3 pieces cut to 21 inches. And then we need 2 pieces cut to 19 and a half. Again, we're going to rip everything this down to different widths over at the table saw. And when we get over there, I'll give you all of the widths of this as well. So next step we talk about on this is going to be our tool list. Everything has already been cut down to rough length for me, but once we cut everything down to final length, you're going to need your saw, preferably a miter saw. We are also going to need our table saw today because we are going to rip everything down to a precise width. We are going to need our router or router table in our case. We are going to need our drill press, and we are either going to need bandsaw or jigsaw. when we cut out the notches for the stems of our wine glasses to slip in, we are going to have to cut some grooves. I'm going to use the bandsaw, but if you have a jigsaw, that works as well. And then finally, we're going to need some small hand tools. We're going to need our sander. We want this thing nice and smooth before we finish it. You're going to need your drill with a countersink bit, and you are going to need your driver because we are going to attach the front to the back with some screws, wood glue clamps, all your normal necessary things, brad nails, etc. We're going to need all of that stuff as well. So that's our tool list. We gave you the basic cut list. Let's get after this build. All right, so let's get after this cut list on the width side. So we are going to need our two 7-inch pieces. These are going to be cut to 4 inches wide. We're going to need our two 19.5-inch long boards. These are going to be ripped down to 4 inches exactly. And then we're going to need one of our 21-inch boards ripped to 5 inches exactly. And then we have two pieces. These are actually going to get glued together, and these are going to make a panel for the back. This is going to wind up being 9.5 inches wide each. So I am going to use today the table saw to rip all of this down. And prior to cutting our back panel to final width, I do need a better joint than this for glue up. So I'm going to use my jointing jig here on the table saw to get a nice clean edge for these two pieces. Once this sets up and dries, I will come back over here and cut this back panel down to 9.5 inches exactly. So let's get to ripping. And now that those two boards have been ran over through this jig, hopefully this shows up on camera, these things fit together really, really tight. If you don't have a jointer, a jointing jig is a very good substitute. It's not going to be the precision that a jointer is going to give you, but this is going to be more than adequate for our glue up. So let's head back over to the workbench and let's get this process going. All right, the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to glue up this panel. We need this thing to start resting, get this glue going so we can get this done first. Then we can get some of our other components cut down to final length and get those assembled. So if you've never glued up a panel before, we're just going to run a bead of glue in here, compress this with some clamps, move this to the side, and let this thing rest for quite a while. So get some glue. We're going to run us a nice bead down either side here. I do want to make sure that I have a good coverage. Whenever you're doing a panel glue up, you want to make sure you get a really nice bead of glue here. And right now, I don't know if this is showing up on camera. I'm not worried that these are not necessarily cut to the same exact width on this end. You can see clearly, hopefully you can see on camera, this one's a little narrower than this one. Has nothing to do with the straightness of that cut because that cut is extremely straight. This is from the big box store. So once this is done, we're going to square it up on the panel cutter to make sure these edges are not just cut to length and proper width, but also square. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to glue this up and then we're going to clamp this together. Good heavy bead of glue. And something you don't see me do all that often here is use my glue spreader. I tend to use my fingers a lot, but I do want a nice even coat here, so we're going to use the glue spreader today. And eventually this is going to get ran through the planer only because I know for a fact by looking at this, one end of this is a little thicker than the other. And Once we get this glued up and this becomes one panel, this is going to go through the planer and clean up that thickness difference we've got going right now. You're gluing up a panel, you want to put pressure on this to get your glue to squeeze out. You don't want to put so much pressure on this that you squeeze all of your glue out. So I'm just going to make sure this is as flat as I can get it. I'm going to put some pressure on this, but again, we don't want to overdo the pressure. We just want our glue to start squeezing out a little bit. Let's clean up as much as we can now. All right, so we've got everything ripped to width and we've got our panel gluing up. So let's get these pieces cut to their final length. The panel and the 5-inch board is going to be cut to 21. These two components, one is going to be the shelf that the wine bottles sit on. The other is going to be where we're going to cut our notches for our wine glasses to slide into. These are both cut to 19.5. And then both of these scrap pieces that we ripped to 4, these are going to be cut to 7 inches long each. I always like to cut my material oversized, especially when I'm doing something that's going to form kind of like a box, like this top portion of this is going to be. That way, when I cut these two components at the miter saw, they are exactly the same size. Same with the two shelves. They are going to be exactly the same size. So let's run over the miter saw. 7 inches, 19.5 inches. All right, we're back from the miter saw. Let's get a couple things done while that panel glues up, while the glue on the panel sets, whatever you want to call it, while the panel finishes. All right, I'm going to cut 4 notches in here to hold 4 wine glasses. They're going to go upside down like you saw in the picture. The stem is going to go in. I have spaced mine out 5 inches apart. That's how much room and clearance I need between each wine glass. Measure your wine glasses, because if you're using a different shape or size wine glass than I am using, you might be able to get 5 glasses in here. But again, don't do odd numbers. Seriously, don't do odd numbers. But
I think 4. 4 is better.
Measure your wine glasses and adjust this accordingly. So I've got a 19.5-inch board. I'm going to need 15 inches to make up my 4 marks. That leaves me 4 1/2 inch, which means I have 2 1/4 on either end. Math, right? Math sucks sometimes. So all we're going to do is we're going to come in 2 1/4 inch. Let me move this so we can see on this camera over here. 2 1/4 inch. We're going to put a mark. 2 1/4 inch from this end. We are going to put a mark. And then in between here, we're going to go every 5 inches. So 2 1/4, we're going to go 7 1/4, 12 1/4, and then that puts us here. These 4 marks right here are going to represent where we're going to drill our hole and the wine glass stem is going to seat into. We need to find the center of this board. Remember, we cut this exactly 4 inches on the table saw. So half of 4 is 2 inches. I think we can handle that one. I know that's a lot easier than when I ask you what's half of 3 9/16, right? So we're going to just go 2 inches here, and we're going to mark these so that we know exactly where the center of all of these holes are going to be drilled. And then we're going to head over to the drill press and drill some holes. So here are the 4 holes we're going to drill. And basically the way this is going to work, we're going to drill a hole right here, and then we're going to bring this out like this with our, I'm going to use a bandsaw, but jigsaw if you have one, and that's going to allow us to slip in. All right, so we're going to head over to the drill press, and we're going to drill our 4 holes. I am using a 1 1/4 inch Forstner bit. Now we're going to drill a 1 1/4 inch hole because we're going to follow this up with a roundover bit at the router table, and that's going to allow the curved bottom of the wine glass to seat in here, and we don't have to worry about it falling off accidentally. The groove that we cut here allowing the stem in, is not going to be 1¼ inches wide. We're going to make those marks once we get our holes drilled. So let's head over to the drill press. 1¼ Forstner bit, 4 holes. Make sure you use a backer board when you're going through this on your drill press, or if you're drilling this by hand. You don't want blowout on the back side. It's going to be the side that shows. So let's go. All right, we have our 4 holes drilled, and now we are going to mark our slots where the stem of the wine glasses are going to come through. Now, the easiest way to do this, hopefully you can see this on that side over here, I'm going to do the same thing I did. I'm going to make marks at 2¼ and then every 5 inches. And this is going to represent the center line of each of these holes that we just drilled. Now we can take our square and we can mark where we want our cutout. And I am going to go about 1/4 inch on either side of this. That's going to give me a 1/2 inch notch that we're going to cut out in this for the stems of our wine glass. Now, the stem of my wine glass is not a 1/2 inch wide, but I want to have, number one, a little bit of play when I go to put this in. But most importantly, we are going to take this, once these grooves are cut out, these notches are cut out, we are going to take it over to the router table. The router bit that I'm using has a bearing on top. We want to leave enough clearance here for that bearing. We don't want that bearing getting bogged down at all in this groove. So that's why I'm going to make this at least a 1/2 inch wide. Now, if you feel more comfortable actually measuring 1/4 inch on either side of this, feel free to do so. I'm going to just kind of eyeball it. I've got a pretty good idea of what 1/4 inch looks like, and then we can head over to the bandsaw, cut out these notches, and then we're ready to start routing. So let's get after it. All right, this is kind of what we're looking to do right here. This is what you should have at this point. Now we're going to run this over to the router table. I'm going to use a 3/8 inch round over bit, and I am going to round over the front edge of this as well as this entire keyhole. I am also going to round over the bottom of the keyhole. That will be seen depending on how high I mount this on the wall, but more importantly, I just want this as smooth and as rounded over as possible with these wine glasses sliding in and out of here. The other 2 sides and the back, of course, we don't need to worry about. They're going to be covered up with our side pieces and attached to the back. So next step, router table. Oh, and I'm sure you guys can see this. Man, it is the 24th of September. And I've asked you guys this before, but if anyone could freaking send a little bit of a breakdown here to us here in Houston, Texas, that would be greatly appreciated. So yeah, I'm wearing my magical color changing t-shirt again. So it's all good, guys. I'm used to it. Let's head over to the router table. So this is what we were going for. So this is what we were going for right here. We just wanted this rounded over. We're actually, when we sand this, we'll even take a little bit more of that off once it's sanded, just to kind of get some of these edges off of here. But yeah, this is what we got. Let's get back to the workbench. All All right, we're back from the router. This thing looks great. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to run the sander over all of this. I want to go ahead and sand this before we start assembly. It's going to be too tight to get into any of this. So I am just going to run the sander over this one time. This is poplar, and if I'm being honest with you, I feel like I got a little lucky. This is a pretty smooth board to begin with, so I'm not going to do my normal process of sanding, which is I usually start around 80 to 100 grit and wind up at 220. I'm just going to do a 120, a light sanding today, just to get some of these pencil marks that we made, smooth this out as much as possible. Then we can start the assembly and the glue up. So let's get the sander going. First thing we're going to do is glue, and we are going to tack this in place with a couple brads, and then we're going to clamp these 4 components together. Now I have cut this board at 5 inches. We want this lined up right here at the top. Hopefully this camera is picking this up over here, which means that we need a line right here at 5 inches. And then that 5 inches is going to represent the bottom of this board. I know, I tell you guys all the time, math sucks, right? All right, so 5 inches on either of these 2 boards. That's where, when we put this together, like this, that 5-inch mark that we just put on here is going to represent the bottom of this shelf is going to go right on that pencil line. And I've designed this to where we have about an inch worth of room in here for the bottom of our wine glasses to slip in and out of fairly easily. So glue, 1.25 inch brads, and a couple clamps. We can get this all put together, and by then hopefully that panel's dry. So let's get after this. All right, man, today has been the episode of changes. I think I'm going to do something. I'm going to run over to the table saw, and hopefully this shows up on camera. So instead of mounting this flush right here, I think I'm going to rip this board down to a smaller diameter. God, see, I told you today, it's been one of those days. A smaller width so that it's flush on the top, but I think I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap right here so that the bottom of the wine bottles are exposed. Don't ask me why, because I really don't know.
He doesn't know.
I just think, honestly, the more I look at it, I think that having a little gap here is going to look a little bit better. So I'm going to run over to the table saw, and I am going to rip this board down. Can't find my tape measure. Man, you ever had those days? I'm sure you do, right? Today's mine. I think I want this thing, we'll rip it down to 3.5. So our face board, I'm going to run over real quick and cut this down to 3.5. I really am sorry for all the changes today, but like I said, I build a lot of this stuff, guys, just as we build it, I build it. And there's a lot of changes sometimes. Sometimes there's none, but today there's been a ton, and I am sorry, but I'll be right back. 3.5 inches. All right, so 3.5 inches. We're going to mount this flush with the top, and then that's going to give us this little gap right here that I think is going to look a little bit better. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Now, before you guys ask, why didn't I cut this and insert it here to where it's completely flush on the inside? Well, I thought about it, but I wanted this 4 inches wide in case you guys were working with smaller stock. So if I would have inserted this, there's not enough room. Hopefully you can see right here, there's not enough room for a wine bottle. A wine bottle needs that extra 3/4 of an inch there to fit in here properly. So glue, brads, let's get this thing tacked in place. We need to let this set up. My wife will kill me if she sees that, because she's on me all the time about sit, set, set. So we need to let this set up. The panel is almost done. I am going to go take a 15-20 minute break, but with editing, it'll be like super, super quick. Get me something to drink, and by then this will all be ready to go, and we can finish this thing up. Be right back. All right, our back piece, our panel has glued up. It has set up, and I just ran it through the planer off camera. I just wanted to take the seam off that was there. This thing needs to be cut down to final dimensions, and for that, we're going to head back over real quick to the table saw. Remember, this thing is going to be 21 inches wide. Let me check my cheat sheet before I tell you right. And we want this 9.5 inches tall. All right, we are almost finished. All we have left to do is to mount this to our back. This is going to be mounted flush on either side, flush on the bottom. We're going to glue this and tack this in place. And then since this is going to be holding 4 bottles of wine and some wine glasses, once I get this glued and tacked into place, we are going to flip this over. And on either end, I'm going to countersink, pre-drill, and put a couple 1.25 inch long screws into this just for some added support. So glue, brads, countersink, screw it down. We're done. Let's do this. That's it. Pretty cool little wine rack. This is made from poplar. I am going to sand it and stain it. And as you saw in the intro video, it looks really nice when it is finished and hung up on the wall. I did make this thing big enough to hold standard size wine bottles or champagne bottles. So you can fit either of those in here. And the way that we cut the bottom with these holes and then we rounded them over, you can see how when you put your wine glass in there, it sits nice and sturdy inside of that little cutout that we made that we rounded over because your wine glass is tapered. So the round over helps have that thing just stay in place. 2 quick things, and then I'm going to let you guys go. 1, next Friday is beginners, episode 11 already. If you are not a beginner, watch it anyway. We have some really cool projects that I've had a lot of people watch and say, hey, I'm not a beginner, but these are some cool ideas and I've dressed them up. Send me pictures when you do that. I really want to start showing your projects on the channel whenever I post a video and say, hey, this is from Joe, this is from Dana, this is from Bobby, whatever. Send me some stuff. I want to show your work to our community. Second and last thing, thank you so much for all of your support. As always, I wouldn't have had any idea 6 months ago when I started this channel that I would be where I am today, and it is all because of you guys. So that's all I got for you today. Thanks for giving me another 30 minutes of your time, and we will catch you on YouTube.